Okay. To start us off, we have one candidate here who's running for Federal District 4 Congress. And we have one surrogate for another candidate running for District 4 candidate. To start us off, we're going to hear 5 to 10 minutes from each one of them. If you guys want them to hang around and ask questions later, that'd be great. But our main focus tonight is our O'Brien County Supervisor. So with that, we have Ryan Melton, candidate for District 4. If you'd like to come on up. Do you want to use this goofy thing, or do you want to use a really nice microphone?
I'll use the nice one. I mean, that looks nice too. Hey everybody, can you hear me okay? Is this on?
No.
How about now?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey everybody. So I'm Ryan Melton, Democratic candidate running for U.S. House in our 4th Congressional District. I'm good enough at math to know that I'm in a county where there's not a lot of Democrats, and that's okay. I'd argue that the biggest distinction between candidates is not party affiliation. I think actually Kevin, Virgil, and I would probably agree on this. I think the biggest distinction is whether we're owned or not. Now, Kevin, Virgil, and I have many different worldviews, but I'm really respectful of the fact that Kevin understands that disproportionate corporate power in the governance space and the political space is really destructive in a lot of different ways in our state. But I figure what I'll do with my time is talk to you about maybe 3 main visions or animating principles behind my congressional campaign. Let's start with the hollowing out of our congressional district. So whenever I go to a new town or revisit a town I've already been to, and either I door knock or I have an event, one of the first things I do is I look at the decade-by-decade demographics trending, population primarily, from the U.S. Census data. We have 36 counties in our 4th Congressional District, right? The vast majority, and by vast majority I mean roughly 30, if I'm remembering that count right, of those counties have seen pretty steady population decline for the past few decades. O'Brien County, we've lost about 4,000 people over the last few decades. 90% plus of the time when I prep to go to a new town, it's the same story. Population decline town after town after town, population decline county after county after county. What that's leading to is an increased amount of insecurity and vulnerability for our communities. And you can see this when you look at all the quality of life indicators across the board that we all care about, right? So we're last in the country in mental health care bed availability rate as a state. We're last in the country in OBGYN availability rate. And of course, the worst in that ranking or the increase or the higher infant mortality and maternal mortality rates you have when it comes to pregnancy. We have the 2nd highest cancer incidence rate in the country, only state in the country that's seeing an increase in cancer incidence. That's for the Iowa Cancer Registry at the University of Iowa. And our public education rankings are falling. And so I would argue that that is a very pressing concern because I've talked to plenty of Republicans in the campaign trail, libertarians, independents, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they all agree that it is proving to be very difficult for us to retain our young talent and to attract talent to our communities right now because of those population declines, right? It's really hard to entice a young family to buy a house here, to build a family and a career here when they're concerned about things like school consolidation, their kid being on a school bus an hour plus every day. There's a lot of disincentives right now to attract that young expert base back to be our doctors, our teachers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I was just in Sac City actually door knocking last weekend. And I talked to someone who lived in Sac City for probably about 50 years. And he was reflecting on the fact that there are 2 doctors left in the town. They're both about 60 plus, and he really worries, are they going to find a doctor to come to Sac City? So that's my first concern. I want to make sure that we're doing whatever we can to identify this hollowing out of our 4th Congressional District, the hollowing out of our rural areas, and then to invest in common sense solutions to attract our people to stay and to attract experts to come back so we can have communities that are thriving again. So that's my first concern. My second and I've already mentioned this a little bit, is my concern about the disproportionate amount of corporate influence in our politics and our government. So this is a problem both in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. I'd say most politicians in both the Democratic and Republican parties are corporately owned, right? I made it my number one guiding principle to reject all corporate money. So I've been rejecting corporate PAC money since the very beginning. You can look that up. That's easily verifiable. You can look me up on Open Secrets. Now, the disadvantage of that is that it will take me a lot longer to reach people because I'm not wealthy. I don't come from wealth. And I ran in 2022 literally initially because no one else was going to the Democratic side. And I felt that even Republican voters appreciate the accountability that a challenger poses to their own candidates because we all need to be held accountable as a people, regardless of political affiliation. So I would definitely challenge any politician running to represent us in our congressional district when we're seeing such a backslide in those quality of life indicators, to reject corporate PAC money to ensure that they're responsive to us, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Independent. Because right now it really does feel like most of the politicians that represent us in the one in DC don't listen to us and don't represent us, and it's because the corporate interests butter their bread, right? That's number two. Number three, actually number two segues into number three. I'm arguably, I say arguably because I try to be humble, because I can't say definitively, but most people credit me as being the first major party candidate to fight the carbon capture pipelines. So when I filed my paperwork with the FEC in January of 2022, again, no one knew who I was at the time. I had no pedigree, no money, no connections, nothing. I was just a guy that was upset that there was seemingly this corporate takeover of landowner rights, this corporate takeover of our water, and this big waste of taxpayer money for these scam pipelines, in my opinion. And so, you know, like I said, I'm very open with where I'm going to be. I'm very transparent. I pre-announce, I pre-advertise my events. So I have talked to a number of Republicans and Independents, Libertarians, as well as Democrats across the district. And I have not seen an issue that is so nonpartisan, that unifies people across political boundary as is the opposition to these carbon capture pipelines, right? Which threaten our landowner rights via eminent domain abuse, which threaten our water availability and water quality. These things are going to use hundreds of millions of gallons of water per year just along the Southern Pipeline at minimum. There's one projection from the Sierra Club that puts it more like 3 billion if you use the water impact data from the ADM plant in Decatur, Illinois, which is the only plant that is actually attached this carbon sequestration tech to an ethanol refinery plant. So they ran that data, and they think the water impact is going to be 3 billion gallons a year along the Summit route. And so I think that issue right there, the fight against the carbon capture pipelines, is in a microcosm really a representation of what is at stake here. Are we going to continue to allow this extraction of our wealth out of our communities, which has led to this massive population decline and all these downstream struggles? Or are we going to fight back? And are we going to take back local control? Are we going to take back control of our land, our water, and our resources? Just so, you know, because what's going to happen otherwise is you're going to have a Bruce Russell making a few more bucks, but we're not going to see those bucks. But we're going to see a lot less water, a much higher risk when it comes to our public health, and a lot of other downstream problems, no pun intended. So when I talk to Republicans in our 4th congressional district, and I'm not naive to the fact that I am running in one of the more conservative congressional districts in the country, you know, time and time again, it is clear that we find a lot more to agree on than disagree on, you know. But I'm not going to hide the fact that as a Democrat, I'm going to have worldviews that are different in certain aspects than many people in this room. That's fine. But I think that the number one thing that as a voter I want you just to remember is to remember who you can trust. You know, when you look at the politicians in front of you, can you actually trust that the words that are coming out of their mouth are their own words? Can you trust that you at least know what you're dealing with? Can you trust that the politician is going to have an open mind, is actually going to be curious and interested in listening to what you have to say, even if they may disagree with you on a number of things? Because if you know those things to be true, then there is reason for progress and there is reason for common ground, right? And I think too many of our politicians right now, they have shown very clearly that they are closed-minded and they are closed off. They're not responsive to us. We need to show that around. So thank you so much for the time, everybody. I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Melton. Now we're going to hear from Chuck Virgil. He's standing in for his son, candidate Kevin Virgil, who is also running for District 4 Congress. Kevin is in Spencer doing a similar thing. He just didn't want to be here tonight.
Well, I think he did want to be here tonight, but yeah, this campaign stuff is, well, it's an interesting game. First, I want to compliment Ryan Melton. He's a gentleman, and I just met him for the first time tonight, but he and Kevin started talking a little bit back in January, I think, when Kevin announced. And Ryan reached out to Kevin, I think that's the way it was, just basically letting Kevin know that Randy Feenstra would never debate him, past and probably future. But Kevin's response was game on. So I think, having visited with Ryan just a little bit here and what Kevin has had to say about Ryan, I think the Iowa 4th District, starting in June 5th, is in for a treat. I think we're going to have two gentlemen who will talk about the issues, and they won't try to blow each other's candle out. It'll just come down to the issues. And for that, I think, yeah, I think we're in for a treat. So, so where do I start? Where do I start? When you want to get to talk about your son, and we've been on this campaign thing for almost 5 months now. And it's a good thing he's young, because I'm old and I'm not keeping up. But it's been such a rewarding thing to have your son doing something like this, and then to have your other son be part of the campaign in a very major way. And like I tell the grandkids now, I want them to be paying attention to what's going on, because no matter what happens on June 4th, and I think we're guardedly optimistic that we're going on from June to November. But I tell my grandchildren that I want them to take one thing away from 2024, and that is the idea of being willing to serve. And so, again, where do I start with? Because I really don't want to blow out Randy Feenstra's candle. That doesn't make Kevin's burn any brighter. I think Randy's doing a dandy job of blowing his own candle out. And I think Kevin has taken the high road and just talked about the issues and the way that Randy has been voting. Most of you have seen these different brochures and mailings. I think one of these that is extremely telling, Randy's first year in Congress in Washington, D.C., he voted constitutionally 80% of the time. And we'll give him credit for that. 2022, his second year, he voted 75% constitutionally. And 2023, a very interesting year, he dropped, according to the Republican Liberty Caucus, it's his own people, he dropped to 50% constitutional voter. And if you look, his voting record is in red, and it goes down. If you can see it, his donations or contributions in green went up exponentially. So yeah. Again, I don't want to blow out his candle. I think he's doing a dandy job. But there's a couple things on here that are important to me, and that would be this FISA court, that he has voted to give them permission to spy on you and I. The funding of 2 unconstitutional wars, they are unconstitutional because our Constitution explains very well how our nation should go into war. he had the opportunity in continuing the resolution, I think back in December, to vote to hold our national debt, to keep it from going up. And at the same time, there was language in that same bill that to get the Congress's approval, there would be language in that bill that Biden had to do something about the border. And Randy Feenstra voted on both of those to keep the border open and inflate the budget. Let's see, what else? I think the one I was asked this morning, the personal attacks of Randy and his people on Kevin. And, you know, my answer basically is what we expected it. We certainly hope it wouldn't be this way, but we expected it. But when he called Kevin anti-Semitic, Kevin is a veteran. He is West Point trained. He has served in the intelligence community. He knows what an ally is, and he knows what an ally isn't. And for Randy to have the gall to call Kevin anti-Semitic, that one troubled me. And if I ever have the opportunity to call him out on it, I will. I don't expect to have that opportunity because he won't even face Kevin or Ryan, let alone myself. So we'll let that one rest for now. But basically, I feel that the people that Feenstra has surrounded himself with, Kevin has had a little bit of fun with these because some of those people, some of his campaign workers are calling or texting Kevin with some snide little comments. And one of them did that. Kevin and Josh did a little bit of research and found out that this particular individual who is on Randy's team ran in a political race not too long ago and got caught doing things he wasn't supposed to do and was chastised. Kevin pointed that out to him, but he hasn't heard from him since. Now another thing is that the Feenstra campaign has really been hammering on Kevin from day one, and again this week on his being out of the state of Iowa. And the first thing Kevin will tell you, after high school, he went to West Point, and yes, that's in New York. Interesting, isn't it? And the Feenstra people condemn him for that. But also on Randy's team is a young man who reached out to Kevin with some snide remarks. Kevin and Josh did their research, and lo and behold, this young man grew up in California, went to school in Michigan, and now resides in Washington, D.C. I would make a comment of, sounds like the pot calling the kettle black, but I might be racist for that one, right? So, anyway, no, again, I think we're in for a treat in our election process this year. And I hope everyone will get out and vote on June 4th, and let's send Kevin on his way. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chuck. Appreciate that. Can you hear me? Oh, barely. Is that better? Okay. This is not a comfortable feeling here. Okay. To start the evening, we're going to go through some introductions with our 6 candidates. Let them give a few minutes, 35 minutes each, on telling you about themselves, what they want you to know about each of them, and their philosophy in terms of, so this is kind of their philosophy as governing O'Brien County. Where they are, what motivates them to do this, wow. Anything else you want us to know about your candidacy. 3 to 5 minutes. Let's start with Tim and just work our way over to Chanel. Oh, before we get started on that, when we're done, we're gonna start with questions and answers. I got a few written. But my hope is that more questions will come from you guys. You guys are the ones that are gonna cast more votes than me. So please, have your questions and challenge these guys on whatever your issue is.
That work, Mel? All right. Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. It really means a lot that people care about O'Brien County politics. When you're in the incumbent position, you hear a lot about things that maybe aren't going the way people want, but nobody wants to get involved. So I'm thankful you guys are here tonight, and thank you to Mary for hosting us. So I am Tim Overmeyer. I live 3 miles south of Hartley. I am 40 years old, and my wife, Lorena, has been married to me for 20 years. We have 4 children. Annika is our oldest. She just graduated from high school at HMS. And then we have Ruby is an 8th grader, and George is in 4th grade, and Caleb's a 1st grader. So we have 4 kids. So we've got a pretty busy life with kids involved and stuff like that. So why am I running? My private sector job, I'm a district sales manager for Stein Seed Company. I currently cover basically 4 counties. I cover Lyon, Sioux, and then the western half of Osceola and O'Brien County. But previous to that, I actually covered 8 counties. And so I've been all the way over past Highway 4. And yeah, I still get over there occasionally. And what's been really frustrating is there's a lot of small towns, especially as you go east. You can't even get gas. Maybe a car patrol, there's no grocery store, there's no cafe, there's no business. The schools are dying. And yeah, I've got 4 kids. And my hope is if they want to stay in Northwest Iowa, I hope they can find good employment. I hope they can find good housing. I'm a firm believer that this is one of the best places to live in the country. We have good values. It's a safe place. So that's the reason I'm running, is every kid that's in HMS or South of O'Brien or Sheldon or any of the Christian schools, I want them to be able to find something that they can do here if they would choose and make this their home for the rest of their life. So that's what I'm passionate about. That's what I'm driven for. As far as my governing philosophy, I guess we have my former government teacher sitting right next to me. I was a 2002 graduate and had Jim as my government teacher. I think he would tell you, if he remembers, I'm probably very conservative. I always say the first thing a government official should ask when they think they're going to do something and save the world is, what am I going to screw up in the process? There's so many times the government tries to get involved and they may make something better for one group of people, but they actually ruin things for another group of people. And I'll say that, like in our family's case, the Obamacare thing was a total disaster. We had a good health insurance plan, and over the course of time, it got ridiculously expensive and was just a total pain. So I know what it's like when big government steps in and makes your life miserable. So I'm definitely not a big government guy. I'm a limited government person. But on the flip side, we're talking about local government. So local government is where the rubber meets the road. That's where we can do the best use of taxpayer dollars, because the people that are running your local government know you and care about you. So we want you to have good services, and we want them to be economical, and we want to do a good job for you. I can't say that people in Des Moines or Washington, D.C. feel the same way. They're looking at it saying, well, there's money, we can go spend it, and like the gentleman had mentioned already, a lot of times it ends up back in their pocket. And I'm thankful O'Brien County's not that way. I think we do a pretty good job of running things really lean and taking care of taxpayer dollars. So.
Can all of you hear me all right without the mic? Is that right? Okay. But I've got a little script here. I'm an old teacher, so I'm used to using an overhead projector, and I don't have that right now, so I'm just going to use the script if that's okay tonight. So I'd like to thank all those who are responsible for hosting this forum tonight. I'd also like to express my gratitude to the current Board of Supervisors, the elected officials of our county, and all the candidates who are here tonight. It seems like so often today there's a need to seek out individuals to fill spots on various boards due to lack of interest in serving. Having 3 contested races for county supervisor is a great thing for the county. It's really what a democracy is all about. So once again, thanks to everyone here for giving the county the opportunity to make a real choice on June 4th. I am Jim Thomas of Rural Hartley. I'm running for District 1 of Bryan County Supervisor. I welcome the chance to tell you a little bit about myself and my background since I'm kind of new to this game. I will try to be as brief as possible and welcome any questions that I feel capable of addressing adequately a little bit later. I must first say that when I was asked to appear tonight, one of the questions was to tell us what your vision is for the county. As a retired teacher, you must know that I sat in on numerous meetings to develop vision statements, mission statements. Not that these are always a bad thing by any means, but it always seemed the outcome of these meetings resulted in much the same as the passages that I had posted on the walls of my classroom. And the same 3 lessons that I taught my athletes and my son over the years. And those 3 are, do more than you have to, good enough is neither, and finish strong. These 3 credos have guided me through my life, and my hope is that many of those young people that I connect with still live these. So in essence, those 3 things are my vision. As far as my occupations go, I am a retired high school social studies teacher. I was at Hartley, Melvin, Sandwood for 30 years and Bottom High School in Tyndall, South Dakota for 4, so 34 years total. I'm a current farmer, and I'm also a part-time delivery driver and parts employee at Johnson Auto Stores in Spencer and Sheldon. And I'm also a part-time employee at Meadowbrook Golf and Country Club in Hartley. So I have quite a variety of work experience. Civic duties and political experiences I was asked about. I was an honor flight guardian. I actually just returned less than 24 hours ago from Washington, D.C. So I got an opportunity to see a lot of the good things in Washington, D.C. It was an experience that I can't even begin to describe at this time, but still kind of put it together. I'm also a member of the Sons of the American Legion, Grace Fellowship Church in Hartley, Iowa, the O'Brien County Farm Bureau, the O'Brien County Cattlemen's Association, Hartley Community Foundation. I'm an honorary FFA member, and I have to say I'm a very proud past Center Farmers 4-H Club member. I've been a participant at the O'Brien County Republican Caucus. I've communicated with state legislatures and congressional reps on a variety of issues. I'm well informed on political issues at every level, and I have a consistent long-time election voting history. I chose to run for this position for a variety of reasons. The most significant are as follows. I want to give back to the community. And by the way, I consider all of O'Brien County to be my community. A community that I have called home for most of my life. As a former American government teacher, I always taught my students the importance of a participatory democracy. This is my opportunity to exemplify that and serve. Now being semi-retired, I will have more time to fully devote to county issues and for communication with those that I represent. I'm approachable, I'm unbiased, and objective. I'm a great listener and a willing learner. I'm also a capable problem solver and decision maker. I feel that I'm the best choice in this race due to my previous and current experience and relationships throughout the county. I understand education and school financing. As a farmer, I'm familiar with agricultural concerns and ag business. As a rural resident, I have experienced the necessity of maintaining our roads, bridges, and other infrastructure. I understand property tax evaluations and realize the importance of keeping property taxes at the lowest possible level while continuing to provide the highest level of service and opportunities. I spent a great deal of time researching and reading supervisor meeting minutes and articles from the past 2 years. I've attended several meetings and have visited with several individuals familiar with knowledge on pertinent county issues. I'm an avid hunter and outdoorsman and golfer, and as such I realize that outdoor recreational activities are a vital part of the culture of our county, and these opportunities need to be supported and maintained. My top issue should I be elected. I was raised, educated, employed, and reside in Bryan County. I'm a 4th generation of Bryan County and Center Township resident. It's been home with my family. That's where my wife Lori and I raised our son Brendan, who's in the back. It's vitally important that O'Brien County remain an appealing, safe, and vibrant place for families, agriculture, and business industry. I experienced firsthand the struggles of the 1980s as a young farmer that purchased land in a turbulent economy and shuttled home between college and a full-time job to do well enough to succeed with the help of our local business community. In giving back, I believe that the most important issues are concentrating on fiscal responsibility while providing the absolute best environment for the residents of the county. It's also extremely important to promote growth and revitalization of the downtowns and business districts of our communities, as Tim already said. I also believe that it goes without saying that local and county law enforcement and first responders deserve our utmost respect and support to keep our community safe. Thank you.
I'm John Statesman. I represent District 2 Supervisor. I have been the supervisor for the past 3 terms now, finishing my 12th year. And I was thinking about quitting there for a while, but the more I thought about it, I thought, I enjoy this too much. I think I'll go back and do it again. So, I know I'm getting older, as we all are, but I'm healthy. My walking isn't as good anymore. Kind of 3 lower back surgeries has restricted me a lot, but I still get around and I can do things, and have been doing so for quite some time. I have 4 daughters, all married. I have 1 son that is handicapped, that lives in Sheldon, and spends his time at Village Northwest. He's handicapped and got a meningitis when he was a baby, and took away his motor skills. I have lived in O'Brien County all my life. I grew up on a farm northeast of San Juan, about 1 mile away from the county line, going towards Melton. I, of course, went through grade school at San Juan Christian, and I graduated from high school at Western Christian. I'm a member of the Cornerstone United Reformed Church in San Juan. Get back to my job as supervisor. I thoroughly enjoy doing this. I research things well. I listen well. I'm not outspoken, so I don't always say too much, but I'm definitely on the voting, and I make very sure of myself and what I say and do. We've done a lot of things here this past year as a supervisor. We worked with the ARPA funds, and that is money that cannot be spent on reducing taxes. We did a lot of work on spending it, and that's a lot of money. It's, I think, $2.6 million. Put out through the COVID time. And we spent a lot of money, but it was on things that we saw coming forward to us in the future. So by doing so, we saved a lot of tax money coming up, but in that respect. We do our best to keep our taxes in line, and we come up lower than most in the state of Iowa in what we spend and how we spend the money. We're very conscious about what we do is in our spending, and don't do anything unnecessary to the best of our knowledge. There's a lot of issues that come up all the time, so looking forward, I can't say a lot of things we're going to do, but they come knocking on our door, and before long, we're involved with them, and we try to make very good decisions. I thank you all for the support that you've given me over the past 12 years, and I hope I can have your support in this upcoming primary and general election. I thank you very much.
I'm Barb Rohr, and I'm currently your Brand County Auditor. I've been your auditor for 35 years now, and I'd like to thank you very much for the opportunity of being able to serve you like that for this time. I've actually been working in county government for 42 years, so yes, I was very young when I came here. I don't know what happened, but I just kind of decided I'll be 64 this coming March, and I've done this for a long time, and maybe now it's time to do something a little different. And everybody told me I'm not quite ready to retire yet. There's no way I can just stay home and play with my dogs all day. So I thought this would be a way that I could still be involved, and I've been with the board for 35 years. So I said, and if you're not aware, the county auditor is also the secretary to the Board of Supervisors. So I'm with them every week, and I can say we've always worked very well together. I have enjoyed my time with all of the board members. My decision to run for supervisor has nothing to do with anything, any issues I would have with the board. It's always been a very enjoyable experience to work with them. I've been a resident of the county for probably 50-some of my years. I tell people I'm a Clay County import, actually. I was just over the line, and when I was in high school, my folks moved just down the road, which put us into O'Brien County. So I was raised on the farm, and then moved into Sutherland when I started working. I have an associate's degree in accounting, and have learned a lot in county government all these years. So what I'd like to see for a vision for the next 4 years for the county, I would really like to continue working with the board on the financial piece of things. My office is one that does work with them very closely on budgets, levies, and we're in the process right now of some changing times with this. Maybe you've heard of House File 718. It's a budget bill that the legislature passed last session, and this budget coming up in July is the first one that we'll have under those constraints. And I worked a lot with the board in this past session on those budgets, trying to get things to come in line that with our funding that's going to be limited going forward, and expenditures as you all have too that are continuing to go up. We get the same utility bills that you get, gas, all those fun things. So I would like to take that opportunity to work with the board to get through this next 4 years of that bill. In addition to that, there's some things that we're looking at. The board has talked a few times about the EMS levy. In this next 4 years, I think that's another thing that we do need to continue to have discussions about. I don't know that we're quite ready yet to look at that. but I think it is a conversation that needs to continue. And we all know that everybody wants an ambulance when they need an ambulance, and funding is a huge piece of that. So there's a lot of legwork that needs to be done to get to a point to even bring that to a vote, much less how much money it's going to take. These past few years, the board has worked with the engineer, and you may be aware we now have a different engineer, we have a new one. But in the past few years, they've worked with getting a lot of these bridges that were posted for weight limits, getting those into better condition so we can get the more heavier loads going through. And now I think the next thing that we really need to look at is the roads themselves. During that time when we put money into bridges, now it's time to start looking at some of these blacktops and ways that we can possibly extend the life for a while until we can have the money put together to do a resurfacing project. So trying to keep the taxes at a reasonable level, looking at and continuing to work with the infrastructure, finding our way through some of these budget bills and things. Those are the things that I would like to help the board work with as we go forward. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Nancy McDowell. I represent District 3, which is Sheldon and rural Sheldon, kind of south of Sheldon as well. I grew up on a farm by Archer, Iowa. Graduated from Sheldon High School. Went to college at University of Northern Iowa with a degree in criminology. After that, I came home, worked various jobs, and then I got the opportunity to worked in the Iowa Capitol under Representative Roy Chambers, who at the time represented Osceola County, O'Brien County, and part of Clay County. So that was a crash course in government at the state level. I did that for 5 legislative sessions. It was a wonderful experience. I learned so much about government, and at the same time, because he represented O'Brien County, I got to keep up on what the issues were in O'Brien County. So a lot of you don't know, the legislative secretaries for your legislators, they open your mail, they listen to your voicemails, they read your emails, because your legislators are busy at meetings. So we're kind of the first contact to get your information to your legislature. And one year, Representative Chambers was actually deployed, and so I actually did all of his work for him. I couldn't go to meetings, I couldn't vote, but everything else I did, and that was one of the most rewarding times of my life, because I actually had a lot of people come back to me and tell me that I helped them a lot on a lot of issues. A lot of my job was doing a lot of research for bills, research on issues they had, helping them find what they needed, resources at the local level. So I've always been involved with politics since I was young. Even in middle school, I was going to presidential caucuses with my family. My family, we didn't go always on fun vacations. We went on educational, historic vacations. So I kind of grew up with that lifestyle. My mom's a teacher, whole family of teachers, so that was kind of what I grew up with, learning about history. And I'm fourth, fifth generational person in O'Brien County. So we were always raised by my parents to really appreciate what we have in O'Brien County, appreciate your roots, appreciate your family, appreciate everything you have. Can't think of a better place to live than O'Brien County. So I was talking about going in middle school, I was going to presidential candidates. In high school, I was voting my first straw poll. I was going to my first caucus. I was voting my first election. Even in college, I was one of the probably less than 1% of the student body at UNI that actually did my research and voted for student council and the student president at UNI. I don't know if I've hardly ever missed an election in my life. I'm always doing research, even on judges. You know how hard it is to find information on your judges on the ballot. It's very difficult. But I'm one of those people that always votes. I think it's one of the simplest but most powerful ways that you can get have an effect in your county and in your state, and I will never take voting for granted, ever. After I worked in the Iowa legislature for 5 years, my current husband and fiance at the time, he was willing to move back to Northwest Iowa. He's from Eastern Iowa. It was always my goal to move back here because this is where I loved and this is where I wanted to be. I'm a small town girl at heart. So I took that opportunity while I was moving and changing jobs to go back to college at NCC and got a degree in welding. After that, I did a lot of substitute teaching and teaching welding. I was a welding instructor for NCC for various different levels, also working different jobs, and that's when the opportunity came up for an open seat in the district and after the census. And so I was kind of pondering running. I always knew I wanted to run for something one day, but I decided that this was the time. I've never looked back. It's the best decision I ever did make was to run for county supervisor 11.5 years ago. I had somebody today ask me how long it's been, and I did have to kind of stop and think. And I said, it feels like yesterday. And she said, that's a good sign that you enjoy your job, is that it's gone so fast. And I would have to agree with her. So I've been here as county supervisor for 11.5 years. I love it. Couldn't think of a better job. Everything I've done in my life has led up to being a supervisor, all of the civic duties I've done my entire life. My philosophy, I'm a lifelong conservative Republican. A lot of you probably know me as the secretary of the Bryan County Republicans. Been the secretary for 13 years, very active in putting on the caucus, running the county convention, delegates to district and state convention, etc. And my goal is, I believe in, is a grassroots effort. I tell people, if you're going to complain, you better step up and do the job. And that's what I've always done. I've always stepped it up and done the job. I probably have a problem where I don't say no. One of my philosophies as a supervisor would be, I take a very active approach in the role. I treat this as my full-time job. I love to go and talk to all of the employees, and I like to see what the issues are in Bryan County. I don't shy away from kind of learning what's actually going on in Bryan County. And I like to talk to the constituents as well and kind of get down to the core issues. I am kind of a quiet person by nature and an introvert, so a lot of my work is done behind the scenes, and I'm aware of that. So a lot of the things I do, you don't always see at board meetings, but I'm always working behind the scenes, doing research, visiting with people, etc. So, I can ramble on and on, so I'll probably shut up now. I'll be Ryan, so please talk to me and appreciate the 11.5 years, and I would ask for your vote on June 4th.
Hi everyone, I am Chanel Mattis, and I just feel like, should we just get up and stretch a minute? Stretch.
I'll do that.
Yes. I feel like sometimes if I'm sitting too long, then I go a little more antsy. Anyway, as I mentioned, I am Chanel Mattis, and my husband and I live in Sheldon, Iowa, and I am running for District Number 3 for O'Brien County Supervisor. My husband, Dan, and I have been married for 17 years, or going on 17 years, and I married a bachelor at the age of 44, who is a Minnesota boy. My husband works at Citizen State Bank. I have worked for the Chamber in Sheldon on and off since 2003. Currently, I am filling in as the Chamber Director in Sheldon until September, because what happened was they had turnover in the office, and I was seeing where things were not getting done, and we wanted to continue having membership active in our chamber, and so I stepped in, and I will be in that role until September. And since then, we have hired a new chamber director who actually happens to be my daughter, and she currently lived in Ames, went to Iowa State, and her husband are actually coming back to Sheldon, O'Brien County, where her husband will be a physical education teacher at East Elementary in Sheldon. So we're excited to have them home. My oldest son, so my two older children, Todd Helmers is 27, and he lives in Sheldon, and he works for FCS Elevator out of Boyden. He drives a big semi truck and jumps on the Terragator. And then Trista, and then our youngest, Dan and I have Tamsin together. She is 15, and she is a freshman at Sheldon High School. And I wanted one of my kids to actually follow in the footsteps of mom being an FFA. I was a state officer in 91, 92 for FFA, and she is actually starting to follow into those footsteps of being an active member with the FFA. So that's exciting to see. Having experience, and let me give a little bit more detail. I graduated Sibley-Cheaton, and I only went to school there for 2 years, my junior year. My dad, unfortunately, my parents went through the 80s of agriculture. I was younger, so I didn't always see that. But I do see where agriculture is very important, and not just in Northwest Iowa, but in Iowa in general, and other states. So my husband, he is originally from Beaver Creek, Minnesota, and they do farm. So we do somewhat have a little bit aspect of with the farming, but not as much as what he used to after losing his parents. So that's a little bit about us. Again, I'm filling in as interim chamber director. Previous to that, 4 years ago when I was at the chamber, we actually had lost my father 6 years ago in July, and then we also had lost my mother-in-law 6 months later than that. And then my father-in-law, who had dementia, we realized he had dementia, and it's a very, and I think that might be one of the questions, mental health comes up. So mental health is not just the schizophrenia and all these other things, but also dementia is huge on that. And I was fortunate that I was able to resign my position at the chamber and to care for my father-in-law who had dementia. And so, as I was sharing with someone last night, you know what, I would do that all over again just to be in that space and have those moments with him. So, so that's a little bit about myself. Again, I'm in Sheldon, and why did I choose to pull my papers to run for O'Brien County Supervisor? This was not a decision that I took lightly. This is not something that I went, oh my goodness, I'm filling in as an interim chamber director, and what am I going to do after that? Because I can find plenty of things to do. But I was passionate by serving on past boards, if that was O'Brien County Extension, if that was O'Brien County Tourism. I serve currently at O'Brien County Foundation. So not just having to be on boards with the county, but also serving on different boards because of things being chamber related. If that is from Sheldon Tourism to Marketing Committee to planning town events, that's what I do. I plan those town events. And so you're constantly working with a budget. You're constantly looking for individuals to help give you wealth of knowledge. I can do research and whatnot, but actually going out and talking to people to find out what are some of the issues. And it might not be the strong issues that are in the newspaper or on radio. It might be simply having a conversation with someone that is a veteran that is on disability and listening to them of where that person said, I feel like I have to justify to someone why I'm on disability. And I said to this person, I think you have to also show compassion. And so I said to this individual the other day, you know, I don't know what you experienced while you were in the military in Vietnam. I don't know. I don't know the physical aspects of it. I don't know the mental aspects of it. But I said, you know what? I am willing to listen. I'm willing to absorb it. And if there's something, I want to always be approachable. So if there is an issue that comes up, I would hope that I am approachable and that people can come and visit with me. So thank you for the opportunity. Last thing, I'm so excited the fact that 2 of our grown children and one spouse are choosing to come back to not just Northwest Iowa, but also to O'Brien County. Thank you.
Good. This thing, I'll run around and when you have a question, if you want the mic, we'll do that, but I'd rather do this. That's really uncomfortable. I'm going to tell you guys a little bit of the story. In the meantime, I'm going to ask each of our candidates up here, they each were given a Sharpie and a couple of blue pieces of paper. Grab your Sharpie and one of your blue pieces of paper, and I want you each to write down what you feel is O'Brien County's greatest asset. What do we need to be selling? What do we need to be telling the world about O'Brien County? Okay, while they're busy thinking through that, writing it down, for those of you who know me, and there's quite a few of you here, are probably very well acquainted with the idea that I think the biggest evil in the United States is our political parties. They are the source of our problem. That's my opinion. So I don't do parties, but I do vote. And sometimes I even will register for a party to vote in a primary. So years ago, I served on a really large board. And they had to have all of this equity. Equal number of females, equal number in political parties, equal number in the activities from their categories that you serve. So I was serving as a female business person, independent. That's me. All of a sudden I got a call from the executive director and he said, "You're a Republican." No, I'm not a Republican. So I had to come in really quick and switch my affiliation. So that's my story. I love this conversation. I think we need to get to issues and stop worrying about the less than American team. That's my opinion. So you guys got your best assets down? Okay. You want to show them? So what I'd like to do through the questioning tonight is come back to these assets. Shout them out, people.
Quality of life.
John, do you have one yet?
O'Brien County, great place to work and a great place to live.
Bart?
People.
Quality of its citizens.
Values.
Okay. We're not all going to memorize that, but we'll keep that in mind. Now, with their second piece of paper, I would ask them to write down the things in O'Brien County that we need to improve, that we need to work on. Maybe that has something to do with why they're running. While they're doing that, I want to let you know, Zach Deacon, who serves as our District 5 House of Representatives in the state of Iowa, was also invited to come tonight. And he did respond. First time he just said thank you. He contacted me a little while ago at the beginning of this, and he and his wife were expecting their third child, and he said it's been a long day, so I'm on dad duty tonight. So we did not get our current House of Representative, and he does not, to my knowledge, have any competition. So that would be the reason why he didn't come. At least that's what he told me. Do we have our things to work on?
Be more inviting outsiders.
More inviting outsiders.
Small town business revitalization, promote small business growth.
John?
Well, the town of Sanborn, for a long time, the buildings were getting more and more empty. And now they're starting to come back in, and that's very encouraging. If only we could do that with all the places, that would be so much better.
Mental health access.
Communication and working for the betterment of all.
Ooh, mine's a little different. I said, tune our own horn of the fabulous things we have to offer: tourism, economic development, agriculture, and safety.
Thank you all very much. Please feel free to refer back to those. Hold them accountable to those things that they just told you are our greatest assets and the things we need to most work on. Tonight I've got several categories of questioning that are hot issues. They've come up over the course of the last 12 to 18 months, I think, of following the supervisors. Carbon pipeline, library funding, that's kind of a new one. Public health, mental health, the jail, economic development / quality of life. You guys want me to slow down or? Redo it again, categories? Carbon pipeline, library, funding. And that's coming out of the state, by the way. Public health, mental health, the jail, economic development / quality of life, everybody okay? Okay. Okay, so those are the categories. I want to start with the carbon pipeline. My first question is, who of you has comments or questions about the carbon pipeline? I know there's a lot of stuff in here about the carbon pipeline.
Mary,
Yes.
not being a resident of O'Brien County, am I allowed to ask a question or not? If not, that's fine. Am I allowed?
I'm fine with that, sure.
Okay. My question on carbon capture pipelines is, if you're elected to the board, would you be willing to seek out setback ordinances for these pipelines? I know that Summit, of course, has sued numerous counties for pushing for setback ordinances when it comes to the pipeline. But Cassuth County, for example, still set the setback ordinance anyway and challenged it in court after the initial decision. So just curious on whether you would push for setback ordinances for those pipelines in relation to distance from schools, businesses, and homes.
Okay, why don't we ask that first? That's kind of a yes or no question, isn't it? Would you push for setbacks of the pipeline from essentially where people are going to be?
Right.
And livestock, probably?
Correct.
Yes or no?
Well, I'd say it's a little more than a yes or no question. So we're actually, we've got a couple of people that are on the board right now that are going to go meet with Summit and look at the plume data in June. But the reason for doing that is to look into what the effects are and how big that plume radius is, and then we would react accordingly. So I would be willing to explore that at that time.
My answer is going to be just a straight yes. I would look into that.
We have looked into it somewhat already and talked about these things, but it definitely needs more thought and actions. And also, we're definitely against imminent building. And if that's the only way they're going to get the land, I don't want any part of it.
I would have to agree that I think it's something that we need to look into, just like the turbines. When the wind turbines were put in, the board did put ordinances in place to have additional setbacks on those. At the time we did that, there were a lot of discussions on that as well, because it was only so far you could go, because you couldn't be perceived as picking on one certain entity. So other counties tried to make their setbacks to the point that it was impossible to put those in. And there you go again on the lawsuit.
I would be in favor of looking at setbacks. I know, like Barb said, there is kind of that fine line of where you get too far of a setback, you do face lawsuits, and I know a lot of those have been challenged at the courts, and they have all lost, unfortunately. So, but yeah, I think the plume study will be very interesting to learn about once that happens as well.
I would say yes, I would want to look into the setback regulations. There again, I this is definitely probably a hot topic. I would want to do some research, get some education on it before I would necessarily say exactly where I would stand on it.
Okay, thank you. Do you guys, I'm going to ask this of the incumbents, so there'll be 3. Are setbacks something close to, or getting close to a zoning ordinance, which Bryan County does not have, and there's a, in what I've seen, a really strong resistance to zoning in the county? Do setbacks move the needle a little bit on zoning? This is for the incumbents.
You know, I would say, I would say they're somewhat along the same lines, but I don't know that we have to go the full measure of zoning to put some setbacks in there. I think as long as we have good data to base that off of, I think we'd be willing to fight them and challenge them and see what we can do. So yeah, I think it's a step that direction, but I'm definitely not in favor of going the zoning direction as far as the full zoning in the county.
John?
We've always been against zoning, and I think we will continue on that channel already. But there's no reason that we can't copy some of the ordinances that are being set by places where they do have zoning. And I looked at some of those and I thought, these make sense. I think that's something that we should look at.
For the record, I am in zoning. I think that's a slippery slope. However, we did some similar setbacks or ordinances for wind turbines. And I think that this CO2 pipeline is a similar instance where it's a big kind of unique project. It's not an everyday thing that happens in your county. And so select kind of ordinances on some very controversial, large-scale projects like this, I think is something that I would consider.
Thank you. Now, this question is for the challengers, and it's still on pipelines. Do you support eminent domain for private enterprise? And how whole do you think those industries need to make the landowners where they acquire properties, easements? Did that question make sense?
I'm not in favor of eminent domain for private uses. The bypass that went through Highway 60, rural water, things that are going to benefit the public, absolutely. I think eminent domain can be used for that. But for a corporation that's going to be a private entity that is not going to benefit the whole public, I have a real issue with that. Private property is one of those sacred rights that if you decide to sell your property to an entity that's going to build the carbon pipeline, that's your decision. More power to you to make that decision. But when you're forcing someone to do that, I don't believe that that's a proper use of the domain. That being said, I think all of us kind of realize that a lot of this, other than the setbacks, is out of the county hands. It's in the IUB, it's in the court systems with the legislature, possibly even the governor that's ultimately going to make this decision. We can do the setbacks. I agree with Tim with the zoning. The zoning is you're opening a can of worms. Even if the county were to do zoning right now, I think retroactively, it would not stand up in court if they were to go back and say, well, we're not going to allow it to happen. Clay County, Sioux County have zoning ordinances, they have zoning committees, commissions. The last time I looked at the map pipeline, they're going through Clay and Sioux County, so what good did it really do? So that being said, no, I'm not in favor of eminent domain, but I've also done a little bit of reading, and I know that there's a company called Cap CO2 that does that has a mechanism, that has a technology that enables them to put a device at the ethanol plant or at the soy processing plant, biodiesel plant, that will capture that carbon dioxide at the plant and actually turn it into methanol. And there's a big market for methanol. Methanol is used to power ocean-going liners, it's used to make plastics, all sorts of things. That would actually enable the ethanol plants and biodiesel plants to have another market for the CO2 that they could profit from if that technology becomes available. And I'm further going to say that if we put a lot of expense into these pipelines and the pipelines go in, it tears up a lot of the land, it's never the same again, and 2 or 3 years down the road, those pipelines become obsolete, what have we done? Because there's always a chance of that. That's my take on it.
Okay. How do you transport the methanol?
The methanol can be done by existing rail lines. Rail.
It's a bummer being the second one here, because he got it all. Yeah, I don't support eminent domain. It wasn't allowed to be used on the turbines. I don't think it should be allowed here because they both are private. And it should be willing sellers if that's the way they want to go about it. I also have a problem with the pipeline. I don't see the carbon footprint that you're going to create by the manufacturer and all the work to put this in the first place is huge. It just seems to me that there's got to be a better way to do this or use it, and then to pipe it clear to North Dakota, and then we put it down in the ground, and it will stay there forever. How do we know that? You know, a long time ago, they thought it was a good thing to use the ocean for a dump, too, and we found out that wasn't a good idea. I just don't think this is, I think there needs to be more research, or we're not just thinking this all the way through.
I think all of you are nailing it. I do not agree with eminent domain as well. I feel that the property owner has the right to make the decision, kind of like with the wind turbines, that they want to have that on their property or not have that on their property. Again, I feel like there needs to be more research. Again, I need to do more homework on it to learn more about this issue.
Thank you. I know what the hands are going to do here. Raise your hands if you think if eminent domain goes through for this pipeline that there's corruption in government. Okay. Most of what I thought. A couple years ago, or a year, no, it's a couple years ago now, a sitting elected official stood up in front of a crowd, much like this, and said, "My favorite constitutional amendment is the Second Amendment." And he said that that exists in order for the people to hold a corrupt government accountable. Does anybody here think that this carbon pipeline might reach that level? Okay. The people are speaking. All right, let's move on. I didn't do a lot with safety or liability on the carbon pipelines. Like I said, 2 hours goes really fast with 6 candidates, so I'm going to skip the safety and the liability discussion. The plume models are coming up. Keep us posted. In case you didn't know, these companies, when they do their plume models, will not let you and me in to know what the plumes are going to do. And they won't tell us where they got their data to put into the computer to show us what the plumes are going to do when the air pressure is this and the wind speeds are that in that direction, and we can go on and on. So we'll see what the plume models have to say. So we're going to go past that. Okay, for the challengers, let's start with Barb, since you don't want to go second this time. Tell us what your opinion is of public libraries. How do you feel about that?
I love public libraries. I use them a lot. I think that the funding for them, what was done in this last legislative session was terrible, where we have some of our communities that actually did referendums for the libraries to do an additional tax. After House File 718, that will now go away, even though the people voted for them. The legislation that was proposed in this session that took funding of libraries from that the counties and the city shall fund to that they may fund, I disagreed with. Luckily, that didn't pass. I think libraries are great. I think that their usage has changed drastically over the past 20 years. I did enjoy the presentation that the librarians put on for the board a month or so ago. It was kind of an eye-opening thing as to all the different services that they are providing to the people, that it's not just about books. It's access to the world, access for people to even fill out job applications. So I think it's very necessary.
Now?
I have to say I love libraries. By serving my second term as on the Sheldon Community Public Library, one thing that I have noticed is that circulation is up 30% in our area. It's up 30% because what we're seeing is individuals, if it was where they, with economic times and with inflation, what we're seeing is people are getting rid of their cable, and they're maybe renting, or not renting, they're checking out DVDs. You're also seeing where people are maybe giving up internet because they can't necessarily afford the internet. They're coming in and they're using the computers for research, or they're also doing job applications there. Seeing that, what excites me is when I get to see kids that are not even in kindergarten yet, and their goal is to read 1,000 books before kindergarten. And to see something like that, it's just a simple little certificate, but it's the fact that you're seeing dedication not only from the parents, you're seeing that from the teachers, and you're seeing the dedication from the kids. And so, and unfortunately, yes, with the state taking away levy money, for example, we had to find $40,000 of what were we willing to give up at our community library. $40,000. That's how much it had drastically dropped. And we learned, you know what? Maybe we have to focus on different avenues that, you know, unfortunately we might not be able to have XYZ magazine, but we have to look into other things. The other thing that we've looked at is to kind of offset some of that we've had to go out and look for grant applications. With one of our grant applications, we're looking at getting actually a Hispanic collection, because that is one entity that is not being represented, and we know that we need to bring in those that are not English speaking, so we're going about that. So there again, I love public libraries.
Jim?
Well, I'm a very avid reader, especially in the winter when there's not a lot going on. My son can testify to that. I do the Barnes & Noble thing, but you know, I'm thrifty as well, and I check out a lot of books from the Hartley Library. Actually check out a lot of books from the Sheldon Library too. I know Barb on a first-name basis, and you know, I go in there a lot. So when my son was younger, we participated a lot in the summer programs, and those are still going on. I think they're hugely beneficial for kids. So yeah, I'm a big supporter of libraries.
Okay, this library question is for the incumbents. Currently, the state set the minimum levy by the county at 6 3/4 cents per thousand. That's a minimum and that is a must. What Barb recounted to you is that the state is proposing that counties may impose 6 3/4%. I don't know if that means they don't have to impose anything. It can be something less than that. I'm not sure what that means. So I want to ask the incumbents, are you in favor of anything below 6 3/4 cents per thousand for libraries? The 6, now down to 6 libraries in O'Brien County. Let's start with John.
No, definitely not.
Yep. So you're not going to go below 6 3/4 cents?
No, don't want to.
Okay. Nancy?
Even though it would return to May versus Shell, I still would do the 6 3/4 cents per thousand, because I do value libraries quite a bit and know that they have a lot of different uses other than just books. They're meeting room for places, they help people fill out government forms, they do all sorts of things. They're an after-school program for most of the elementary and middle school kids.
I would not be in favor of going below the 6 3/4 cents per thousand. I don't see any need to do that, and I wouldn't be in favor of it. I think we made some really aggressive cuts to our budget here this last session that will help us make it through the House File 718 and not have to even think about one of that.
So I'm going to ask all of you to go back to your blue sheets. Libraries, where do they fit? Something that needs work or something that you think fits within your assets of O'Brien County? Just randomly, go ahead, Todd. Barb, why don't we start with you?
Okay, so if I understand the question, will the library funding continue to fit?
Separate from funding, the libraries, are they an asset? Does it fit with your best asset, or are they something that needs work done in this county?
I think they're a great asset.
What was your asset, best asset?
Our people,
Okay.
because they help with our children, the after-school programs, they're helping people. You've got folks in there that are doing mentoring programs with folks, language classes. There's just all kinds of things that are being provided by those libraries. So it's our people that are putting these things together. It's a great fit.
Nancy?
I would have to say it fits into my quality of the citizens, which is the good thing we have in O'Brien County. What I thought we could work on was communication and betterment of all. And when the libraries came and presented at our board, it was very refreshing to see that they all get along very well and do a lot of kind of working together as libraries in O'Brien County. And a lot of people might not know that if you have a library card in one town, you can have a library card in any town in O'Brien County. So.
Janelle?
I had on my sheet to our own hoard of the fabulous things we have to offer. I feel that it fits in economic and as safety as well. On the aspect of safety is that young children sometimes just need a safe environment. If that could be during the summertime, they need a safe environment that they can come into and they can participate with a program. They can also be there if they just simply need a break from something. So I feel safety, it is, most libraries probably have a camera system where they can see what's going on in there as well, so that will be the safety feature. They have responsible staff, and economic development. Again, I'm going back to where there, people simply are not able to maybe afford the internet, subscriptions to watching movies, things like that. Also, it would be something that if there's entertainment, that is something that they can come to as a family or a group, and that helps with the economic development as well, because they're still coming to your community, coming to your library, still spending money on, maybe that's the only thing they need to do while they go to the grocery store or the gas station. So, yes, I do feel it fits in here with economic and safety.
So I had people as one of the strong points of O'Brien County. And I think that definitely goes with the library when they came and presented. They cared about the people. They showed what we would expect from O'Brien County residents, and that they were nice and friendly to everybody, and inviting. As far as the thing I put that we needed to work on more as a county was being more inviting to outsiders, people that are moving into the area. And I think one of the things that was interesting when the libraries came and presented to the board was one of the things that they talked about is people that were new to the community. A lot of times they came into the library and kind of sat roots down, and they used a lot of library services to get job applications and stuff like that. So they probably do that better than the general public as far as being inviting outsiders.
Yes, I had quality of life down, and I would say that it definitely fits in that. I think all the libraries, I shouldn't say all the libraries, I've been to 3 of the libraries in the county, but I think that they all provide unique services. Some services that some provide, some don't. I was able to go back in the Sutherland Library a couple months back, pull out all the old issues of the Bell, and look at the supervisor's minutes. I had contacted some of the other libraries that maybe have more modern services. They didn't have them all digitized and everything, so that was a great service in the library down there, helped me a lot. I know the Sanborn and the Hartley and Sheldon libraries all have some features that there's on too, but the internet access is big. People that are coming into the county that are new, that need to print out a job application or resume, have that available with the computer access there and so forth. Some of the libraries are a little bit more modern than others, but I think they all do a great job of providing services for our citizens.
I think libraries are a definite asset to O'Brien County. The meeting that we had with them when we had our board meeting here a while back opened my eyes to see how much they were actually doing. There was a lot of things in there that I didn't even know existed that they were doing. And I'm all the more positive on the libraries since that.
Okay, any comments, questions on libraries for these candidates? No comments, no questions? Okay. We're going to move on to, oh wait, before we do, I'm going to be a little bit shameless here. I live in Sutherland. Richard just stepped out, my husband. He's a library board member in Sutherland. He has been, it'll be I think 6 years, 5 or 6 years at least. Just so everybody knows, Labor Day weekend, Sutherland is celebrating that building as a library for 100 years. And the library itself in existence in O'Brien County, that it was technically the first library, and it will be 125 years of providing reading materials and beyond to the people of O'Brien County. So please join them over Labor Day. Sorry for the shamelessness. Okay, there are some things on your table, 2 spreadsheets. There's only a couple of copies, so please share. I want to thank Barb for this one. This is the ARPA spending request, everything to date. For anybody who is unaware, ARPA stands for American Rescue Plan Act. The federal government coming out of COVID or going into it or somewhere and said, we're gonna give everybody a whole bunch of money. You know, Bryan County got like $3 million or something. What?
2,671,359, and then another 100,000 in private funds.
Yeah. Okay, so closing in on 3 million, not quite. So this is the list of county departments who have requested funding from the ARPA funds and what for, and how much it ultimately ended up paying for those projects, or so far the projects are ongoing, okay? This one just takes a snapshot of a couple of departments that have requested and received ARPA funds for different projects. I think just about every department has gotten some ARPA funds. The fair got about the same amount of money as public health, and some different things, there's different amounts. So I took items from this sheet and put them onto this sheet by department. And there may be some argument about if it belonged or didn't in certain ones. Anyway, so when they're under the jail, they had 9 requests that were funded, and I have an error under their requested amount, so it's $904,440. So if you want to write that down, that correction, that's what their requested funds were. They were funded $906,000 to the county, and you can see the projects that they've asked for and what's been submitted so far. So there's a couple of projects over at the jail that are still ongoing. What we know is that 2 of the 3 largest requests are really kind of maintenance issues, the roof, the HVAC. Those kinds of things are going to need to be replaced again in another 20 years, because the jail is about 20 years old, isn't it? 24, 25. We're going to have to do this again in 20 or 25 years. That jail was built to accommodate federal prisoners, mostly. The federal government pays the county some money to house federal prisoners. But our ARPA funds, close to half, about a third, were used to do maintenance on the jail. So my question for the candidates, unless you guys have some other questions, is it time to reconsider if we want to be a federal prison or not? Nancy?
Well, unfortunately, even if we didn't have federal inmates, we would still need a jail, unfortunately. And actually, we're getting to the point where we have more and more what we call local inmates, Bryan County inmates, that we're getting less and less federal inmates. So I think our federal inmates help counteract kind of the cost of what it is for county inmates, because federal inmates, we do get money back from the feds, and even though federal dollars are still taxpayer dollars, it at least isn't out of the county taxpayer property tax pool. Because county inmates, we do have to pay 100% of the cost as far as staffing, food, clothing, furniture, and medical expenses, and transportation, for example. So, I mean, and a lot of the counties around us that even have smaller jails, they do not have the capacity to hold their inmates anymore, and they're having to build bigger jails. So I think we're lucky that we have a larger jail that we can accommodate if our county jail needs ever increase.
Why don't we come this way? Well, yeah, okay, go ahead, Chanel. Never mind. I was going to try to mix it up a little bit, but that wasn't working. Sorry.
Okay, I agree with Nancy that, of course, you have your normal things that you have to do repairs on. I, again, am kind of on the other end because I don't know all the details about the federal compensation and things like that. So I can't say one way or the other at this moment where I would stand on that.
Okay. John, you want to jump in there?
Well, regardless if we have the federal funds or not, we still have the building, we're still going to have that upkeep all the time. So I think we might as well keep on using it for the purposes of the federal funds. And keep on going, that's my opinion.
Mark?
Well, the interesting thing about the jail is when we did the bond, and I was around for that too, when we had that whole discussion and went to the vote on it, and the architects that came in talked about what we would need, and the facility was built to be a 42-bed jail with the understanding that their anticipation was in 2020 that jail would be filled with our own population. Now that's kind of frightening. Luckily it's not, and the county takes in from anywhere between $600,000 to $700,000 a year in federal inmate revenue. It does not turn a profit though. That is not. So I often hear people say, well, you know, the county's making money on that jail. No, we're not, but it does at least defray some of the expenses. So I would have to agree, I don't know what we would do with that facility if we just decided to shutter it. I mean, we do have to have a place to put inmates. So, and the way the building is designed, I think it would be a little difficult to shut down pods.
Jim?
Well, I toured the jail a couple times and I've got some lockers, so I wasn't aware that we were getting federal funding for having the prisons. I wasn't aware how much it was. Barb says $600,000. So, and I look at the jail body standard that's on there and the HVAC and wood. And I mean, I don't see anything that the federal prisoners are doing to cause wear and tear on those items. That would be something that would be inside. So I see no reason not to keep them known.
Yeah, I got a budget here, and, yeah, looks like the range is between the last couple of years, 688,000 to 714,000 in income, federal inmates. So, and I agree with Nancy that if we were to just punt on that, then we've got to come up with some additional funding, because we still got to do maintenance. We've got basically the same amount of employees. Your cost structure is not going to change all that much. So yeah, I think it's a good deal. I mean, I'm not saying that the person should never look at it. I mean, you've got to look at everything, but the numbers I see, it makes sense.
So you know it's coming in 25 years. COVID or big tax hike. I'm going to ask this of the incumbents. Should the sheriff's office be required to contract law enforcement services with communities that do not have their own? Who hasn't started? John, you're first up. Microphone.
It's something I've never given any thought of. So if it's necessary, I think it'd be fine to do so. As it goes now, we're getting on fine.
Okay.
I know this has been a topic that has come up lately with some of our smaller towns that maybe have some vacancies in their law enforcement. So if we did supply law enforcement, the county supply law enforcement for a lot of these towns, we would have to probably increase the number of deputies we have. And our deputies probably would make more than the local town cop that's probably, probably their first job. Our deputies are fairly seasoned, and so they would make quite a bit of money. And some towns I've heard don't necessarily want our law enforcement, mainly because they don't want to pay that much for what we would probably charge for law enforcement in town. And I know a lot of towns, they appreciate having their own law enforcement. They live there, they know the people there, they know their officer, the officer knows their community so well. And a lot of these towns like having law enforcement in their town, all the time. Our deputies are traveling all over the county all the time. So if an emergency happens, we might not be able to respond right away. Whereas if you do have, a town cop, and they're on duty, they should be able to respond immediately. And so that's something to consider, that if the county does take over law enforcement throughout the whole county, you might not have the response time. And I know crime is increasing, and everybody wants somebody to come and save them right away. And so you have to consider that if we took over law enforcement for all the towns.
I think that's a conversation between the individual towns and the elected official, which would be the sheriff that is in charge of that. So I don't think that as a board supervisor, at least on my part, that I would be in favor of requiring them to provide that service.
Yes.
Can we ask everybody that question?
What?
Can we ask the people that are running as well as the incumbent?
Sure. Who do you want to start with?
Whoever wants to start.
I'll take a shot. Well, there is another way to look at that, and I don't know how popular it would be, but there are a couple counties in the state that have what we call unified law. And my understanding of it is it's a separate levy. It's another board that's created that's comprised of supervisors and city officials, and they come together, they have their own budget then for law enforcement, and the county essentially does have all those officers, but it's its own levy, and it's one pot of people then. I don't know how well that would work in O'Brien County, where you've got one large population center up in the corner. I would imagine that your smaller, your Cayumans, your Sutherlands, Archers would probably be more in favor of it, maybe not. But right now, you have two communities that aren't contributing anything, doing anything with law enforcement. And by law, they are tasked as a city to provide that service.
Could you repeat it? Could you repeat the question?
Sure, if I can find it. Should a sheriff's office be required to contract law enforcement services with cities or towns that do not have law enforcement?
I would say no, they should not be required to. If it's cost prohibitive for that town to have their full-time officers and find some alternate part-time officers and like that, I'm not in favor of required.
I agree that the conversation needs to happen with the community and the sheriff's department. This is something that could be a decision on its own as the supervisors? No. Do I feel like that needs to be a conversation with those communities and the sheriff's department? But as far as supplying law enforcement to smaller communities, I think that needs to come up for discussion before anything is determined.
Back to our spreadsheet. Now I'm looking at the little one. You can see here In the middle, the Emergency Management Agency asked for two things. $30,000. I have cameras here. Oops, sorry. That was actually personal protective equipment. And they also asked for a vehicle at $35,000. For a year, our public health has asked for a lot of different things to make their jobs better, that's the employees, and to be able to provide quality, timely, sufficient services to their clients. Is that the right word? Clients? Okay. The nurses generally, and correct me if I'm mistaken, have said that they drive somewhere around 700 miles for their job a week or month?
Probably a month.
Pardon me?
I would say in a month.
In a month? Stones tossed at their windshields are on them. Flat tires are on them. Car accidents are on them. Even if they're working for the county using their own vehicles. A vehicle has been requested twice, or an increase in mileage reimbursement, which is half of the federal reimbursement, I think. It's been no. Requests to participate in different public health programs have been declined because we might have to foot the bill for the staffing or fire something. Correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. The office gets closed because everybody is out doing vaccinations or better care for best babies or any myriad of issues. And requests to make it better have met with no. The facilities are one small office, and they have patients in there, medical patients, coming into this office for vaccines, for checkups, for, I don't know at all. There's concerns about HIPAA requirements in that office. So now they're getting some remodeling done. The walls stay in the same place, the windows stay in the same place, correct me if I'm wrong. There's a little bit of reuse of space and some new furniture. I don't know if we're still going to get the HIPAA requirements met. I'm having trouble seeing how it works. If you've never been there, please go see. They're in the middle of remodeling now. I have two questions for each one of you. Is public health a quality of life issue for the citizens of O'Brien County? And is the constant no, the understaffing, the underfunding, the inappropriate space, is that fair to that department and to the citizens who utilize those services? Chanel, can we start with you?
Sure. I just know, I was looking on here as far as on a spreadsheet, I was looking at public health where they have an office remodel. And it looks like they had put some funds toward it, but as you mentioned, I guess, like, and I don't want to get into too much, but number one, is it ADA compliant? Like, is that door going to change? Again, do I agree that public health is a quality of life issue? Absolutely. From hearing about some of this, do I think that it's fair that they are getting rejected for requests? No, I don't think it's fair. I guess one thing that, and there again, I'm not in the seat at the moment, so I don't know if there's any other issues behind that for funding or for lack of programs or for vehicle use or whatever. But do I agree that it is definitely a quality of life issue? Absolutely.
Jim, let's come to you.
Yes, I would say it definitely is a quality of life issue. And I mean, since the board of supervisors represents everybody in the county, it should be a quality of life issue for everybody. I know there's a lot about public health that I don't understand, but I'm going to have to learn when I get in it. But I do know that when I was out talking to people over the last couple of months, this came up several times, once even from somebody that's on the board, that they would like to see some changes, some renovations, some different things done, but that's something that I'll take people to.
Bart, you're our last challenger on this question.
Well, yes, I do think it's an important quality of life issue. I do want to point out, though, that on the small sheet, that office remodel did receive 50,000, not 40. And also, the balance of the money between the 5,000 and the 1,269, that money also is going toward that office remodel. So, while it's not a huge increase, it is 53,730 for that.
So it says that that was moved from public health supplies, not officially approved. What does that mean?
Well, yeah, I didn't know this was coming public. Those notes I didn't get fixed, but in that last resolution that was done, they did officially move that 3,730.60 over to the remodel project.
And where's that $3,000 from?
That came from what wasn't spent on the 5,000 for on the Best Care for Better Babies program. The former director had asked for funds, and then that was all she spent, is what you see there. So the board was agreeable to move that money over to the remodel project.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to ask the incumbents this. On the same line, EMA got $35,000 from ARPA funds for a brand new pickup. And they've recently gotten a trailer and a new building and a second drone, and they've done a lot of good things. Public health does a lot of good things too, and they've gotten $55,000 from the ARPA fund. I'm going to ask the incumbents. There's still some money, I think, a little bit, in the ARPA funds. Could you do better by public health for that? So I'm going to start with this. Nancy, I'm starting with you for watching this. Should you do better?
Well, I think we can always do better. Yes, I do think that public health is a quality issue for Bryan County. I think one of the challenges we're facing with public health is the state legislature is taking a massive overhaul of a lot of, I would say, a top-down approach. We're getting rid of a lot of local control at the county level and below. And I know we wanted to see kind of where public health kind of shook out when it all came down to the end. This thing is doing a multi-year kind of breakdown, and they're changing a lot of things. We had heard some rumors that they were going to discontinue some programs or do different programs, different funding sources, etc. So when we are in a tight budget crunch, I know we kind of were hesitant to do a lot of changes in public health without seeing what the legislature kind of shook down. As far as the space thing, they do have a lot of space needs. Unfortunately, the courthouse is, it's an old building. The walls are the walls. And I know a lot of our departments are facing space problems as well. So without kind of building a new building, a lot of the departments wanted to have a new building, but we couldn't see we didn't have the funds to build a brand new building. And then which department would move into that building? And currently, our county attorney is renting a facility and doesn't even have a space at all in the courthouse. So we kind of have a lot of issues with funding. So unfortunately, the remodel is kind of the best approach we could take at the time, especially when buildings in Primghar kind of short supply and not, it would take a lot of money to remodel or build, and we're always ADA compliant as well.
Tim, you haven't gone yet, I don't think.
No, I think public health is definitely a quality of life issue. One of the things I would say is the office model, that's one of the things we asked, is that are we going to be able to make that facility compliant? And we were told that it would be, and that was one of the big reasons why we went ahead with it. Kind of to echo what Nancy said, one of the other things is the state may regionalize public health at some point in time. Much like what they're doing with mental health, we're part of the Sioux Rivers region, and basically they combine a bunch of regions together, and that's going to be an entire reorganization. Then I think one of the other things is we did actually look into doing something with the building, and we had some numbers and things put together, and what we came down to ultimately is where's the state going to lead us in the future? And then just like we mentioned, the jail, it's an ongoing expense that our taxpayers are going to have to come up with funds for to keep the maintenance on.
John?
We definitely did consider other places and other buildings and had some plans for those. With the legislation going in different directions, they could move everything basically away from us into one centralized spot somewhere in the area instead of all the individual. So that's one reason to back off.
Okay. It's 8:30. I've got a couple of topics still left, but I think what I'd like to do is go ahead and see if there's any questions on any topic from the audience.
I had a question. So I was going through the ARPA funds requested versus funded.
Pardon me?
I was going through the ARPA fund spreadsheet, looking at the numbers of requested versus funded, and I noticed the biggest discrepancy between those two columns is for the Suicide Prevention Coalition. There was a request of $40,000, and it was only funded at $76.86. I was just curious if that seems like a really big public health issue in our congressional district, and so I was just curious if we get some insight as to why the big discrepancy between the ask and the amount funded on that.
I can address that one for you. The coalition kind of fell apart. It was a volunteer group. They had looked at trying to put together, not really a 2080, but to form a nonprofit. A 501 is what they were looking to do. And then they had change in staffing and things, and they came out of the gate really good, and then it just fizzled. So I did talk to one of them that was still on the committee and asked, you haven't spent any money since this initial, what are you going to do? And they said, well, we're just going to turn it back. If we do decide to move forward again someday, they would do it through a 501. So that's why you see that.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Chuck?
Would you support a return to paper ballots for all elections? And I'll just leave it with that.
Can I stop?
Yeah.
We already have paper ballots. I know they're electronically counted, but everybody has a paper ballot, whether they vote on the FBTs, the disability machines, or whether they vote with the ones that go through the regular scanner. They both go through the same scanner. But each one comes out as a paper ballot. We go through rigorous testing prior to each election. By the way, I'm the Commissioner of Elections too, in case you're wondering. We do testing beforehand. We have to have predetermined outcomes of ballots that go through each one of those machines. And we do a public test that's out in the notice of election. The public demo on that will be Saturday, June 1 at 9 a.m., I believe. The Democrat and Republican chairs are both invited to that. Anyone is welcome to come to that test, where you'll see, here's what we tell you how it's going to come out. This is what we run the ballots. Each machine has went through that. We then will have the election officials. They have testing that they'll, at the start of the election in the morning, they run out that everything is set to 0. After the election, we have a post-election audit that's done. Again, we invite the Democratic and Republican chairs to that post-audit. Will be required by the Secretary of State to count the top office on that ballot. So this time it will be the U.S. Congressional. We won't know until noon the day after the election what precinct will be counted. It's randomly selected by the Secretary of State. We have a committee that comes in, again, Republican Democratic committee, and they will go through and they will hand count that precinct to determine that it did come out to the same as what the machine did. So we've always got those paper ballots. At the end of the night of an election, those ballots are all taken out of that machine, they're put into a metal can, and they seal that, and it is not opened until either after the campus, where we'll put them away and we have to keep them for 22 months, or if that's the precinct that then is selected for that audit. Does that help?
Yeah, it helps, yes.
I'm an old lever machine gal too. I started there, so if anybody remembers those.
Yeah, I guess, no. Yeah, I'll leave it with that. Thank you.
Anybody else? Any comments? Okay. Let's have one.
We're in a climate where we don't know, House File 718, there's some new cats for levies. I've heard, I go to supervisor's meeting, I've heard, great discussions, you're planning very strategically. I love that. In other counties, maybe there has to be cutbacks. Let me ask you, would you still be interested in this position if your compensation was $1,000 a month?
Who are you asking?
Everybody.
Where are you starting?
Where do I start?
Yeah, which one?
Tim.
And I'll say.
I'd be interested in doing this at the compensation of 0. It's really about trying to leave the world a better place. I really passionately believe that O'Brien County is the best place to live, it's the best place to raise a family. Northwest Iowa values are the best thing in the world, and I think we need to preserve that. And I think it's under attack. Those traditional values are under attack in the rest of the country, and we have them here. And so we've got to do everything we can to fight for them and maintain what we have.
I agree with Tim. I'm doing this as a public service. I've always been interested in getting involved in it. The compensation's there, so I guess I'll take it, but I would do it for nothing as well.
I totally enjoy doing this. Yes, I would do it for that.
Yes, I would.
I would as well do this for $1,000 a month.
I just want gas money.
And that's what a lot of your boards do. So, thank you. Thank you. And we have an option then, don't we? No.
As a member of the comp board.
Yeah, but I represent them.
Anybody else?
I have a question.
Okay.
And I know, I probably should know this, but Is there a sample ballot online that you can look up before you vote, that you can see the sample ballot?
Absolutely, it's out on the O'Brien County website. It's right on the home page. You can see
Bryan County?
O'BrienCounty.iowa.gov.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. 1 minute wrap up. Who wants to start? Barb, you haven't started yet. Right? Oh, Jim? Jim's volunteering.
Hey, I know one thing that, might be out there is like the lack of experience, lack of public service that you haven't served this before, and why should we pick you over someone else? And I just wanted to make the fact knowing that everybody knows already, but everybody that's up here as well as everybody else that served in public service started out with no experience and gained it, learned the processes and the systems as they went on, and I'm a willing learner and I'm more than looking forward to doing that, so I appreciate your support.
I've enjoyed all the time that I've worked for the citizens of the county, and if you want me to continue plugging along for a while, I would greatly appreciate that. But if not, I thank you for everything, all the opportunities that you've given me. It's been quite a ride.
I'm going to agree with Jim earlier as, you know what, I might not have the political experience of knowing how everything runs or the topics or whatnot, but I know how to roll up my sleeves. And I know how to listen. I know how to do my homework. I know how to respond to emails or phone calls, or if it's just sitting down and having a cup of coffee and getting to know the citizens of O'Brien County.
I worked for the public for 46 years in my previous work at the elevator marcher. And to me, this is just a continuation of what I was doing, and I enjoy this probably more than I did what I was doing my work over there. But I always loved doing my work there as well.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight. Getting involved is always the first step in learning more. I'm willing to talk with anybody. Over kind of in the back, I do have kind of my information on a sheet if you'd like to take that home with you. I appreciate all the support I've had in the last 11 and a half years. I love this job. I can't think of a job I would love more. I'll do better and work harder for you. And I appreciate your support and vote on June 4th.
I'd like to echo what Nancy said. I appreciate everybody coming out tonight. I'm kind of the new guy on the board. I've only been there for 2.5 years. But I think in the 2.5 years, we've done a lot of good. I see you have the ARPA spreadsheet in front of you. I added up, by my count, it looks like we used about 1.8 million of those ARPA funds for things that would have had to come out of normal property tax dollars in the future. So I view that as a big savings to O'Brien County residents. And then you look at this current budget, or the budget that starts next fiscal year that we just got done working on. We trimmed $250,000 out of that. And that was give and take. We worked hard, went through line by line. We're doing the best we can to be responsible with the money that you provide us. So I enjoy doing this. Like I said, this is my home. I want to make it better for the next generation. And if you consider voting for me June 4th, I definitely appreciate it.
Thank you all for coming.
Like,